going on? It's Chris the Dating Doc, and I want to talk about self-auditing. Self-auditing, looking in within yourself and not blaming others for dating. Okay, for example, we will blame apps, or we will say all man or woman are the same, or it's just the dating world. Dating sucks. Sometimes the problem is us. And we don't do that, right? We don't do that audit because it's so much easier to blame the outside world than to look within yourself. So I'll give you some examples. I've heard clients and friends say, well, they just don't know how to communicate. Or after a while, they don't communicate with me. They don't respond anymore. They don't want to go on another date with me. Big piece of this could be the other person. Okay. So as you're watching this, I don't want you to think that everything's so universal, right? I don't want you to think that, well, what Chris, the Dating Doc, is saying, it must apply to everyone or none at all. What I am saying, though, is that sometimes we are the problem. We're the ones that are not communicating as well. We're not ready to be vulnerable, yet we want a long-term relationship. We're the ones that don't have that genuine smile when we go on a first date, and we respect the person's time and energy, and we might just look uninterested. And it's powerful you do this because when you can look within yourself, when you can do a lot of self-reflection, you can find out a lot about yourself. So there's things that can be tracked numerically, right? Like, if you're spending too much money on alcohol, on clothes you don't need, on just overall things you don't need, right? You can see that through your bank account being lowered, right? The balance coming down a lot lower than just the bills you pay. Same thing with weight when it comes to fitness. If you're gaining weight or if your cholesterol levels being increased or whatnot. Now, the mind and dating is a little bit trickier to measure, right? It's hard to say, well, out of these 20 dates, which ones generally cared about me? Or can we measure how many of these dates are actually my fault, right? So that's why it's very ambiguous to measure when you yourself are the cause of unhealthy choices when it comes to dating, instead of blaming the outside world. So this is more of a reminder that sometimes, instead of blaming, you have to look within yourself and see, hey, am I being the best reflection of what I want when it comes to dating? So I'll give you another example. When it comes to social media, a lot of people will blame a politician for what's going on in their life, right? Why they're so negative. Now, granted, there are special groups or lobbyists that they make their money based on who wins and who loses. So again, nothing is universal. But what I am saying is that instead of saying, well, you know what, the reason I'm so angry, the reason I want gun rights or don't want gun rights, or I want, extended gun reform, may not have to do with a politician. It might be the psychology, the way you react to it. That's why the news makes so much money off of our emotions. And at the end of the day, we can control our own emotions. So it's the same thing with dating, right? You can control your own destiny, but we often find a scapegoat, which, for example, would be the apps. Or this bar just doesn't have enough people. Well, guess what? Use that bar as an opportunity to meet someone, to talk, to use some of the techniques and tips that I talk about. Look at opportunity instead of just blaming the outside world. Another example of doing a self-audit is saying, hey, what have I done in the past couple years that has led to me losing my friends, family, or people that I'm dating, right? Have you tried to communicate enough? Have you practiced being vulnerable? Have you practiced your boundaries? Okay. So if these are things that you haven't really looked at, again, I repeat that: vulnerability, your boundaries, and looking at, hey, overall, Am I the best version of myself, or am I just blaming it on the outside instead of looking in? So it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. It's a difference between a sports team watching their opponent and a sports team grading themselves and seeing their own mistakes. There's a lot of power in that. So hopefully this is something that you find helpful. It's something you can do on your way to work, or even while you're at the gym, while you're working out. The physical piece of it, look at some of the ways that mentally you can audit yourself and say, hey, what have I done that I could do better? And what are some of the things that I would consider strengths and weaknesses? And I give you these general parameters because in the end, it's your style. As long as you stick to it, it's your style. What ends up happening with a lot of these tips and techniques is that I don't want you to think that it has to be black or white. It has to be one way or the other. But again, adopt the mindset of self-auditing. Okay, this is something you can do after you've after you've gone on a date and say, hey, look, was I the best version of myself? Did I smile enough? Did I make enough eye contact? Did I play on my phone? Which, by the way, if you're playing with your phone, that is a no-go. That is very rude. Even if you don't like your date, you're not enjoying your date, it's very rude to do that. So again, some of these things are going to come easy for others that are watching this. This might be a journey into self-discovery. And so if you have any comments or questions on what I just discussed, comment below, let me know, because the only way we're gonna get better is by me also self-auditing and learning how I can make the best videos and techniques and tips so someone who's listening to this can benefit the most. So I'll leave with this. If the dating doc himself is doing a lot of self-auditing, then there's no reason why you can't. We're not perfect, and that's the beauty of it. We continue to grow. Our imperfections become strengths, and what we see as weaknesses become opportunities for growth. So hope you enjoyed this video. Check the next one out. Thank you.